Hey, 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 hey. Happy Friday. So excited. It is Friday. Let me know what you're doing on Friday. Drop it in the comments. Let me know what you are most excited about today and this weekend. I'm going to share with you a little story about debt, bankruptcy, two kids under 2 years old, and creating a life of freedom. So, I'm doing a 7-day video challenge showing my team how to show up in a powerful way and share their stories because the message is always in the mess. And a lot of times we don't want to share the messy stories. I can remember when I lost six figures, it was very public, and the humiliation and the shame that I thought that I had brought my family, that I thought that I had made so many mistakes. I was 6 months into my first attempt at being a business owner. I had no idea what I was doing. I had money burning a hole in my pocket. I was hanging around with people who seemed to be successful, but knowing what I've learned 9 years later, the very first thing I learned is trust but verify. So when people show up into my life, I trust what they are telling me and I verify that that information is true. If you're ever hiring a coach or a mentor, you want to trust but verify. So when I first got started, I was invited to see a thing and I was sold hook, line, and sinker. I was already looking for ways to quit my career. I was already open to the idea of making more money. I was always looking for an opportunity. I don't mind gambling. I don't mind taking risks. And so I was already kind of open and looking. I just didn't really know what I was looking for. And what happened is I found a small business idea and I met someone who, took me under their wing and taught me how to lose six figures in 6 months. And what it really did, I'll tell you, is, the victim in me was like, I can't believe this happened. This was a scheme. I was conned, and all of the victim mentality things that we go through. But after going through that, because the message is in your mess, it was really there was a pit in my stomach through halfway through the transaction when I was like, this is not right. Like something's wrong. It shouldn't be looking this way. How come this is happening? How come that's happening? Like there were a lot of questions that I had, but I had so much insecurity in myself, and asking questions to the authority, to the mentor. Who was I to ask him? I'm sure he knew so much more than I did. He portrayed himself to be wealthy and have all this stuff, and it wasn't the case. It really was a con. It was, he was an actor basically. But I had to take full responsibility because I still handed over checks to him. I still stayed in the transaction. I still continued through the end of the business, which ended up losing in a very, very high, very public financial loss. And I still went on. I was in so much debt. And the idea of going back to work, I had just paid off all my debt and bought a house. And that took like 2 years. And that was not six figures. It was like 30 grand. So the idea of going back to work to pay off this debt was like, it was never going to happen. I was like, this is sink or swim. You're in it. Burn the boat and keep going. And so what I did is I went to events and I actually met real people who were small business owners and asking them a lot of questions. And that's called sweat equity. I didn't have any money, but I had the time to invest. And so what I did is I just took people out to lunch or met them at a coffee shop because I couldn't afford any more than a cup of coffee. And sometimes they bought mine. And I just asked them a lot of questions. How did you get started? What books were you reading? Who was your mentor? What did you do? And it was almost like my own version of Think and Grow Rich, but I didn't publish a book. I did what they told me to do. And so after everything was said and done, I still went on to create a life of freedom in my first year. In that same year of that loss, I still ended up doubling my salary. And I've been here for 9 years, and I raised my children. My daughter's right there watching TV. And the word freedom, right? So I want to invite you to ask yourself, like, what is your life of freedom? because a lot of people paint such a big vision. Oh, my freedom is I want to go here and I want to do this, and that's great, but from here to there, right? From 1 where you are to 10 where you want to go, a lot of people get stuck because they don't see step 2, they don't see step 3, and they don't see step 4. And I know for me in my career, I would always, every time, I was Googling how to make $1 million in a year, how to buy a franchise, how, like, I was open. I was looking. I loved my job, but I hated going to work. I loved the money. I'm motivated by money, and I hated getting up at 4 a.m. I hate unloading trucks at 4 a.m. Right. And so I had to figure out how to make it work with 2 children under 2 years old. And that's where this incredible platform came into play. And the skill set that I brought was customer service. I actually do enjoy talking to people. And I've learned how to not talk to people that complain about their lives, because they're at 1 and they stopped looking at 10. They can't see past 1. They can't see past the money being at the end of the month. They can't see past the debt. They can't see past the victim mentality. They can't see past woe was me, woe was me. And that's, I was there too. I was there too. So I'm not knocking and I'm not judging. It wasn't until I got out of that and kind of turned around and went, oh, I was actually holding myself back because I hadn't met anybody who doubled their salary in their first year. I hadn't met anybody that had success building a small business. No one in my family had a small business. I hadn't met anybody that actually had passive income. And so it wasn't until I went through my own version of Think and Grow Rich and started interviewing people that had all kinds of small businesses and implementing what they taught me so that I could go on to double my salary in my first year. But also I had people coming to me saying, Jen, how are you doing this? Like, you just went through foreclosure. You just went through bankruptcy. You have 2 kids under 2 years old. How are you doing this? And so I started teaching people for free. And then I realized what a waste of time that is, because freebie seekers want free. They don't implement. But when their wallet's in it, their heart's in it, right? And so they start to learn how to implement the information. And, I've paid, I'm sure I've paid well over $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 over the last 9 years in coaching and program and mentorship. But it really wasn't the information. It was the implementation of the information that people pay for, right? I will always pay for money to solve my problem. And for me, the problem is I want to raise my kids, right? I want to be a stay-at-home mom, but I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom cooking and cleaning. I want to be a stay-at-home mom that brings home the bacon and works part-time, works when I want around my kids' schedule. And so that was the problem that had to be solved for me, because the other flip of that coin was that I was going to be in debt forever, ever. 6 figures of debt paid off, like, I was going to be in debt forever. Someone else was going to raise my kids. I was going to miss out on 60 plus hours of their life. And I didn't have kids to have kids. I had kids to raise them. And so it just wasn't really an option for me. Burning the boats, I don't recommend doing that. There's a much better way to get started and get 500 a month coming in, get 1,000 a month coming in, get 2,000 a month coming in. And then at some point you can burn the boat forever. For some people, like I'm actually grateful that I did decide to burn the boat, because it was sink or swim, do or die. And that's kind of my personality. Like, we're in this, right? I'm a procrastinator. So like for me, I'm like, someone gives me homework. I'm going to do it the day before. Like, all right, it's do or die. Let's go. We're going to do it now. We're going to get an A. And so that's just my personality. I'm a very red personality. I'm very driven. And it works for me. But for some people, that pressure, they don't do very well under it. And I put myself under so much pressure that I don't need to worry about anybody else putting pressure on me, because trust me, I'm very, very hard on myself. So what I want you to know is it doesn't really matter what your current situation is, what your financial situation is. I learned a lot about debt, losing all the money. In fact, I just started building it all back up, right? My bankruptcy was discharged in 2018. And about 3 months ago, I got 7 brand new credit cards. I just opened 2 businesses yesterday in my daughter's names, because this is what you do. When you lose it, you learn how to get it much faster, much quicker. And you can help people much faster and much quicker because you went through it. And it's crazy, but those failures are the biggest blessings. Most people just don't want to admit their failures publicly. And I'm here to tell you, man, have I failed? Have I failed? Have I lived with guilt and shame and resentment and all kinds of things. But I showed up every day. I committed to being 1% better. I surrounded myself with mentors who had systems in place so that I could, just step into the system and start duplicating it. And then I learned how to charge for the information. I mean, I learned how to charge. And I'm not afraid to help people. I'm not afraid to say who I do and who I am and who I serve and how I help. And some people are, but you got to go through all of that to kind of gain that understanding of like, no, I can definitely help you make 10 grand a month, and it's going to cost you 3. Like, I paid $20,000. Actually, I paid $200,000 in my first year. So when someone's like, oh, I can't afford your $149 business, I'm like, we are not even in the same boat, woman. Right? That's just kind of how it is. You want to talk to people who are not going to make excuses and not going to, if they want to stay stuck, stay stuck. I don't want to stay stuck. I don't like staying stuck. And I don't want to teach my kids how not to ask for help, because that's probably one of the biggest things that I could give them, is teaching them that we do need teachers. We do need mentors. We do need guides. We do need friends. We do need family. We do need each other. And they get to be a part of not just my, immediate family, but huge families. I mean, international families, because of this industry and the friends that we make using social media. So wherever you are in your journey, the messier, man, the more powerful. You're exactly where you need to be. You're right where you need to be, even if it doesn't feel like it. I promise you that the mess that you are in is the message that will inspire someone else. So don't be afraid to share the ugly, share the mess, share the message, and don't hype it up, right? I'm not saying I made $1 million in my first year. I fucking wish, but I didn't. But I did double my salary. I did work part-time. I was consistent with the system. I did have mentors in place. I did have people helping me close the sales. Like, I had things in place that allowed me to be successful. And I wasn't afraid to call on my mentors and say, hey, I need help. I'm not ready to close on my own. I'm not ready to work with this lead. I'm not, I wasn't afraid to tell my mentor where I was in my struggle so that they can help me get to that next step. Because there's where you are now. And then there's 10, the freedom, right? So freedom for me is traveling with my kids. It's waking up whenever we want. It's homeschooling, paying for education, that whatever we want. Like, that's freedom, right? It's a lot more money at the end of the month, and buying real estate, buying digital assets, so that the passive income is always coming in. So if I want to learn how to play the piano, I can. If I want to learn Spanish, I can. If I want to learn how to cook vegan meals, I get to be a student because I continue to pay for my time. So that's 10. So then where am I between 1 and 10? Where am I? And then 10's great, but what I need is the mentor to get me from 5 to 6, right? The mentor to get me from 6 to 7. And sometimes those mentors are going to change. I build online. So my mentors, they have built 7 and 8 figure businesses online, right? So I'm very, very strategic with, here's where I'm going, and you've already gotten there, and I'm happy to pay so that I don't go through the same pitfalls that you went through. Really, when you pay for a mentor, you're paying to not go through the pitfalls. You're paying for that implementation. You're paying for their time because you're buying your time. You're going to pay in sweat equity, or you're going to pay in money. I will pay in money. It was funny. I was talking to a friend the other day, and I was like, well, sometimes before you crawl, you got to learn how to walk. And he said, Jen, I'll pay double so that I can run. And I was like, and that's why we work together, my friend. So that's my Friday tip for you. Hope you guys got value out of that. If you're interested on learning what we do and the systems that we use, you're more than welcome to come into a group. There's nothing to, it's all free trainings inside of that group, and got a lot of cool stuff going on. So yeah, super excited. All right, guys, have a great day.